Okay, folks, we're live. Listen, I'm with Sean Connolly right now, and this is the first time I've done a live podcast interview. And the reason I'm doing it live is because I think this is such an important topic. And if you want to share this link and let people know and get involved in this conversation, Sean's going to be here. If you've got ask any questions, put them in the box below, and Sean will get back to you straight away, and we'll answer live as we go along. It's something that I think every parent should be maybe paying attention to, because the information Sean's going to provide here could definitely help us all future down the line. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but somewhere along the line, there's going to be, we know got a goal that Sean's going to talk about today that could help you get through your kids and get the response you're looking for. So, Sean, how you doing, mate?
Good, Paul.
So today we're going to talk about resilience in kids' mindsets. And this is something that, well, something I've got a big interest in, but something that you've been doing yourself for how many years now?
About 20 years now, working with the children, actually through sport and activities to build that resilience for their future.
What do you think, Sean? What do you think is the biggest obstacle we're facing currently? COVID?
Well, and we were chatting about this morning, and I seen a couple of videos floating about of the way things used to be back in the day when we were kids and there was no health and safety, and that's how the topic had come up. a lot of society now has forgot about the teaching of resilience to children for the future, even in education. And then what you have is a lot of parents being really overprotective and not letting their children even get involved in sport. Some parents don't want their children even taking part in physical education if it's rugby, in case they get hurt, or the likes of hurling. And what you're really saying is, in a roundabout way to the child, is you can't cope with that. You will not be able to cope with getting hurt. You're not strong enough to deal with this. And this is where our belief systems are installed as we grow up. You know, you're programming what people call the subconscious part of the mind. Yeah, the submind, the 88%. And you're installing beliefs in the child up until the age of 16. The programs are put in there that you can't deal with this. And that would be the origin of stress and anxiety in most teenagers and adults. What is the feeling of stress? It's just it's a frequency in the nervous system sending a message to your brain that's saying, I can't deal with this. I can't cope. I can't deal with this. If the resilience isn't there, if you don't have the experience of dealing with hardship and challenges and taking risks, then that feeling will remain. It's going to remain there. And then that's where the stress, instead of coming and going, it can stay long term, which is what we call anxiety with the body, and the mind is in a hypertonic stage. And then people can only hold that for so long, and then they burn out, and it goes into apathy, which is a breeding ground for depression. And I don't have to tell you about the talk about pandemic. We've had a pandemic here of suicide with youth and adults. I think it was the highest in Europe for youth. So we need to put the structures and the processes in place for our youth today, so they are more resilient in the future when they leave the home, when they're taking up their own careers, when they're getting involved in marriages, life in general, really. But we have to do the work now, and the best place to do that is through sport, because a child doesn't like to be lectured to. Once you have them in that environment, and I think there's been a lot of things taken away from us during lockdown, but I thought that was one of the worst things I could have done with children, is taking them off the pitches, not letting them out in the parks. It's different for us adults. We can adapt, a lot of us, but just to say to a child who is really passionate about their sport, no, that's it. No school, no sport in the room.
So tell me, Sean, you said something there about kids. It's the experience. We're basically telling our children, you're not capable of doing this. So you saying in a roundabout way that the adults, the parents, whether it be purposeful or whether it be from a state of, fear themselves, we're the reasons why our children are turning out the way they're turning out, or we're a direct response to it.
In many cases, and it's nobody's doing it on purpose. It's just lack of knowledge on this topic. Everybody wants, your child is your most precious possession that you have in life as an adult, as a parent. So obviously, some people are overzealous and they don't want anything happening to the child, and they wrap them in cotton wool, but they're not being good to them. And in reality, to send them out into life without some sort, it's like hardships and even pain is subjective. Take for instance, you've a young lad brought up in rugby, okay, and you've another lad who has never done any sport, he's never had an injury, he's never done any hardship, and they both have a knee injury. Say it's a medial collateral ligament, it's twisted it, and you ask the young guy in rugby on a scale of 1 to 10, where's the pain? You might say a 7. Yeah, you might say a 5. If you ask the young lad who's never experienced that before, he will say a 10 out of 10. Now it's the same injury, the same level of pain, but according to your past experiences of pain and hardship. So it's the same in life.
So then, going by what you're saying, basically, it's a parent's duty, in a strange way, to let their children feel pain, experience pain. I suppose we can't stop pain. Pain's part of life. It's our job maybe to manage it but I see it, I personally, I shit myself when my kids are climbing trees. Like Sive, my oldest, she has no coordination. God love her. She's a very clumsy child, but she's always wanting to do things. And I find myself all the time going, Sive, don't do that, because I'm anticipating she's going to fall. And I'm catching myself on going, fuck, I'm imprinting a thought in her head that she's not capable. And funnily enough, Sive would be very reserved compared to Evelyn. Evelyn would just be like, get up a tree. Now, Sive would be up a tree as well, but Sive's always waiting for permission almost. And I've got a funny feeling that's my overprotectiveness has caused that sort of personality trait within her. Do you think it'd be right in that point? Or
yeah, it can't be the child's personality. Some children are very introvert, some are extrovert. It depends on what 9 personalities to look at there. But I was saying, rather than putting them up trees and letting them cross bridges where there's trains underneath and that, sport is a classic environment to teach these. Sport, you're mastering new skills. You're trying to make new friends. Sometimes you fall out with people in teams or in the club where you don't get on. So they're learning to actually build rapport with other people. They're learning how to negotiate. They're learning how to make up. They're also learning the lesson where I get back what I put in. Nobody's going to hand me a trophy or a medal. Nobody hands you the game. You have to put the effort in, and that's a vital lesson for life. You have to deal with loss. Sometimes you have to become the counsellor and counsel some wee friends who can't take the loss. There's so many skills involved in sport that we use in life that a lot of people are missing out if their children aren't involved in that. So
how do parents overcome that? Because I'm sitting there, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm going, yep. But I'm putting myself in that perspective, and I'm not going, I fuck up there, I made a mistake there, I make a mistake there, because I'm holding Sive back, or I'm preventing them. What the parents need to do, what action the parents need to take to step back and teach themselves to allow their children to do these things, because it's the fear of the parent. The parent doesn't like the thought of going to the hospital, the child being in pain, dealing with all the subsequent problems that a broken arm or whatever comes along with that. How do you teach parents to step back from that?
It's again, as I said earlier, it depends on the parent. Like I remember even myself back when I get through into boxing, I was getting bullied bad, and my mum hated boxing, and I remember coming home with a black eye and a black ear, and there was a bit of a shouting match between her and my dad. She says I wasn't going back, and then it got worse in the morning, because a lot of times after a boxing match, if you took a lot of kidney shots, you were getting up in the morning, you were passing urine in the toilet, which was coming out blood, a lot of blood in it, which made a parent panic as well. So then I had to pretend that I was playing football, which I wasn't. I had to tell my mum I was going to football when I was really going to the boxing club. And then I remember there was a photograph in the Andersonstown News of me and who was it? It was Eamon McGee's brother, Paddy. And there was a photo of us after the boxing match. And my mum went mad. So you have to, it has to be done in a measured way. And it's not always through, accidents, letting them climb trees or in sport. It's mental resilience. There's emotional pain as well. And sometimes it's a combination of both. Sometimes our children go through, like my 25-year-old now, when she was younger, she was very bad with eczema, and there's a lot of children out there that have disorders like that, and it's very agitating for a child. They're constantly bleeding. It makes them angry. They don't know what's going on. They're children, but they're learning resilience. They have their own strategies. They come up with their own strategies to deal with things and to get through things. And that same daughter of mine's very resilient. She went to Australia on her own when she was 23. She's out there 2 years now. She stayed on somebody's couch until she got herself a job, got her own apartment, got her own work, and she's doing great. And she's a very resilient person. And I would put a lot of that down to younger, psychologically, and they learned that children are very, very resilient if we allow them that freedom to develop some of that resilience. If we pamper them and wrap them up too much, it's about balance, Paul. Everything's about balance. So I'm not saying give them a really hard time, but even if I remember my other daughter falling in the caravan park and she broke her wrist. So I would tell her about how phenomenal the human body is, okay, and how the body's healing that, and how it's going to make it stronger than it was before it was broken. So it's about reframing everything for them. If I see a young one falling, and they're about to cry, I'll say to them, do you watch wrestling? Yes. Well, you're just like them professional wrestlers now. That's what they do. That's how they're so tough. They fall all the time. So reframe it for them rather than stopping them doing things. But it's about balance. And everybody knows their own children. Not every child will want to go into the likes of rugby or hurling or boxing. It might be music even. The music's no different. You have to practice it. You're not always going to get it right. And then there's times you have to perform in front of other people. So they have to learn to deal with that anxiety or that fear of failure.
Parents would do well, I think, if they were to be more open to realizations that every experience for a child is a potential learning moment for them, and it's a way to teach them, like if they're giving up on the guitar because they can't get the chords, just having them sitting down and just practicing that chord and find that patience within them. Like Evelyn right now, she's teaching herself how to whistle. She's 4 and she got excited. She's been practicing for weeks, and Sive can do it, and Lucia can do it, Rory can do it. And she got it the other day after practicing for weeks and weeks and weeks, and she thought she was the bee's knees. But it's just that I was able to use that small moment, go, see, you practiced, what else can you do? And it's that sort of, for me, it's like just trying to use those wee small moments to teach them, like discipline, self-discipline, and that pushing themselves on forward. How do you go about in your courses, in your programs, getting the kids themselves to realize they're capable of more?
They let them feel it. It's better felt than dealt for a child, and that's why my workshops are all applied psychology. It's not just, even with adults, it's not just sitting them down and lecturing to them. There's too much of that goes on. Even I'm running a course at the minute, coaching coaches, and all the girls went to university. They've all degrees in psychology, but they're a bit taken aback on how I challenge them with everything I teach them. And I ask them, how do you know I didn't make this up? How do you know? Go out, prove it. Prove me wrong. Don't listen to what anybody tells you. Go and prove it. Don't accept it as truth. And constantly challenging them. And the way I was challenged, like I was when I started getting flown out to America and Canada to teach teenagers in performing arts, a lot of the older teachers would say, "Who brought this? Who brought him over? Why'd you bring him over? He doesn't dance. He doesn't play music. What does he know?" So I was constantly challenged on that for 20 years. So unless I believed in the tools that I was teaching and believed in the end result and could see the resources in the youth, it wouldn't have worked. And in that environment, it's not like sport. They're perfectionists, and they want results on the day. So, and that made me resilient. It made me adapt. And made me learn, because you don't get it right all the time. But how do you learn to walk? You fall lots, don't you? You have to keep falling. How do you learn to ride a bicycle? You're going to fall off the bicycle. You don't say to your child, "Okay, right, you fell about 10 times now, so you're not doing that anymore. You're starting to embarrass me, and you're going to hurt yourself." You just keep going. But some people, their ego gets involved when they get older. They attempt something maybe 2-3 times, and then they don't do it again.
I was going to ask you, do you find kids are more open to your methods than adults because of the lack of ego, because they're still at that point where failure is just a common thing and they don't really personalize it, internalize it to that point? Or do you find adults respond better?
If it's left up to the children, they're brilliant. A lot of the pressure put on the children in sport or arts is from certain parents, and they're sending them a message by their behavior in a verbal and a non-verbal manner. If you're not a winner, you're a loser in life. You have to be number one or you're a loser. So that's pressure. That's took away the fun, the enjoyment, the flow state of the human body, because it's in flow when you're enjoying something, when you're associating the pleasure to it. And they're putting pressure on them. So it becomes it's not about me now. It's about not letting my parents down. It's not letting the coach down.
So are you in agreement then about like participation medals and things like that? Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that's diluting the importance of competition? Because in my opinion, personally,
no, I don't believe in giving kids trophies not just for taking part. They have to learn. If you got that medal, you worked hard for it. If you didn't get it, let's look at why you didn't get it. Let's look at how you can improve your skills, and everything's practice. You can go at it again next time, but it doesn't mean that if you've done your best today, that was your best. Your best just has to get better. That's all it is.
So what age do you think the competition level should be introduced?
I'd say about 12. 10 depends on the sport. Depends on the sport, really, doesn't it? And depends on the individual. And again, and I've noticed this with, especially with a lot of dancers over the years, the performing arts are different from sport. A lot of artists, they're very creative people, and they don't like to compete. They like to express their emotions through the performance. And when they do that, they're in the zone. And I noticed I've worked with about 10,000 dancers over the years. I noticed a lot of them, when you mentioned the word competition, they would cringe in their body. You see their body tightening up. But if you talked about performance, they used to get really relaxed. So I had to change their perception on who they were and what they were doing on the stage at the World Championships. You're up there if you think you're a performer, go up and perform and let people see your performance. If you like to compete, if that's in your personality, get up there and compete and show the competition what you've trained for. So it's again understanding the individual, because we are all different on that level. What motivates us? So and then you get some of these dancers who they didn't really do much as amateurs, but see when they turn professional and they get on a show like Riverdance or Lord of the Dance, they just flourish. They open up because they're doing what they believed was their purpose, to perform. There's no.
Tell me, Sean, should have maybe asked at the start, but why should people listen to what you're saying? Like, what makes you an authority in this thing? Because Are you book read or are you experience led? Like, is all your knowledge come from learning and then applying it, or is it from personal experience from your past?
Always a planet. Always a planet. Oh, as you know, my background, I have 30 years in musculoskeletal therapies and the last 20 years in psychological, mostly with hypnotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy. But it means nothing unless you're putting it into practice. And that's one thing I always done. I always, okay, you're telling me that works. Say pain management. I need to be able to cause analgesia or total anesthesia on my body, or put it in a somnambulistic state, make it like a steel rod so somebody could stand on me, head and shoulders in one chair and my feet in another. Then I believe it. And I'm very aware that if somebody doesn't feel something, if you don't experience it, you're not going to believe it. And that's what's I go to. I'll stop going to them. I used to go to a lot of lectures. It was organised by different universities, and you know the person up there, they're just regurgitating stuff they've read in books, and they haven't lived it. And people pick that up. People, especially children, are very intuitive. They know if you don't believe in them and their end result, they pick that up. They don't believe it. And why should they? They have to feel it. So everything has to be measured. You know, if I'm going in, if it's a running club or weightlifting club, I have to break a record on the day. So if I don't, it's blah, blah, blah. It's me just talking nonsense of books I've read. You have to believe in what you're doing.
What I was going to say was, with you've worked with dancers, footballers, fighters. In fact, you worked with me in I think it was my second fight. You worked with me, and I won that fight, Sean. So you must have done something right. But you've this wide range of people you help in different sports, and none of them are very connected. There's no connection really at all. So to me, that indicates you must have some sort of principles behind your teachings. What would you say be the ABCs of, like, getting your message home to kids?
It's everything you need you already have. That's what I've always. I don't give anybody anything. They already have the resources. I've just been trained in specific methods that will tap into certain resources that even a lot of psychologists don't cover. Psychiatrists would never cover it.
Why?
They just don't train in it. It's like a physiotherapist don't train in applied kinesiology. So someone will boo-hoo it and say it's nonsense. Yet it's practiced by doctors. There's a famous orthopedic surgeon in London teaches it. So tell him he's a clown.
Do you find there's a bit of resistance from different fields of study?
It's an insecurity. Some people, they put their, okay, I've got my stuff, it's in a box, I've got my degree. That's all there is. There's nothing outside this. I didn't study it. And I get a lot of that as well. I remember the first book I wrote, it was backed by Sport NI, the House of Sport NI. And they done the launch, and they asked me, the marketing team looked at the book. It was a book for dancers, and says, my God, you have a blueprint in this book for every sport, personal development for children in every sport. Will you rewrite the book? So the first sport I was asked to do it for was golf, and I don't play golf. So I rewrote the book. I gave it to some professional golfers I'd worked with, and they filled in all the jargon, all the golf jargon. Because I laughed. One of them says to me, Sean, it's not a sand pit, it's a bunker. Yeah, it's not my sport. So I brought it back up to Sport NI, and in their words, what they told me, it was a new director, would you not be better going back to university and doing a degree than wasting your time writing books? I've written 4 books. I was a kid that left school when I'm told I was stupid. Yeah, I've lectured in universities, Limerick, Ulster University, Queen's University. I'm flown to America and Canada. I was supposed to go to Australia before the lockdown, and they have some of the best sports psychologists in the world. So a lot of people will tell you that you're wrong. If you're not in their tribe, that you're not good enough. If you believe in what you're doing, keep doing it. That's what I've done. I went to Jordanstown, excuse me, and I spoke to the director who teaches the sports psychology. Yeah. He's a doctor, and he laughed when I told him that Sport NI had sent me up there. And he says, in his words, why the hell would you want to come up here and start all that all over again when you're already out doing what we do? He says, I know your work. He said, so I says, will you look at my work and tell me what you think it is? Because I put this together myself. And I took me down to his office and I drew it up on a whiteboard. And he says, you have took advanced psychology and you've simplified it for children. He says, I've never seen that done before. He says, but the last bit, haven't a clue what it is. The last bit has to do with unconscious programming through games, activity, challenges.
I'm honored to you, actually, because you're one of the guys that I love to listen to, because you've such a depth of field of knowledge that I don't think I actually appreciate. I've always said to you, if you lived in America, you would be a multimillionaire. You'd be a Tony Robbins type character because you've got those skill sets. It's just that the culture we live in isn't really ready for the availability of knowledge you have, that on the planet. But what do you see the future? Because look at personal training now. Personal trainers, they're all going into mindset stuff. It's all, personal trainers starting to realize that the mind is crucial in all elements. Now, I've been in this for so many years, you know this yourself. But where do you see this development going, this type of mindset development going in the next 10 years?
Hopefully it will end up in the education system, even if it a one class on it, or it wouldn't be hard to interweave it into the education system. But you have to, I don't know who would make the choices for that. I think as parents, but we have, because you could be doing this in school and then you're coming home and it's being sabotaged in the house. And that's why even at my workshops, I always bring the parents in for the last 20 minutes to tell them what I've done, why I have done it, and what they have to do as a parent to keep this going. And I give off to some of them. Funny, you can see I do a lot of measurements for self-esteem, and a lot of the kids with the lowest self-esteem in the groups, you can see it in their parents. They're standing at the back, they're very shy, they don't ask questions. And I tell all the parents, listen, when you get home, you go through the notebook with your child or your teenager, and you do it yourself according to your life, because there's no point in you putting your children into these things and building them up if you're not going to build yourself up. We have no excuse. Even if you're doing this stuff all your life, you have to work on yourself every day. You have to. Nobody's going to do it for you. And when you're not weeding out the garden, weeds are always going to grow back in the mind. You might be putting stuff in there to grow, but it's always going to be choked by the weeds. And that can come from old belief systems. It can come from people around you, by your environment, by external circumstances, what's going on today. You have to become resilient. You have to adapt to everything. You have to adapt to the change. Keep reassessing yourself where you are, where your life's going. And we're all capable of that. It's not rocket science. And that's why I try and simplify things down, because too many people complicate it. And it's at the start now, and I know a lot of people getting into this, and they're reading 2 books and then they're all over social media and they're giving people advice, and that's just them being excited about it. But they need to take their time and they need to train on it properly, and they need to make mistakes, but they have to be working on themselves. It's common sense, really. If you go to see somebody, say you go to see a local expert on weight loss, and you go in and the guy is maybe 6 stone overweight, you're going to take advice off him.
Yeah,
it's common sense.
It's I've known you, God, 20 years now, and I've known you through martial arts. So, was it martial arts, do you think, that got you involved in the mindset, the regimentation of martial arts, the breathing, the meditation element? Was that what brought you into the mindset work and how the mind works?
It was, I'd say, what got me introduced into the whole medicine side, the Chinese medicine. And then they don't separate the mind and body. So they look at imbalances, electrical, emotional, nutritional, and structural. Whereas in the West, we tend to separate. You're just a lump of meat, and even it's sad too. But a lot of GPs aren't trained in any sort of psychology. Everything's medication. Um, Again, probably with the mind, because you can't see it. Like, even people will give you empathy if you have a broken arm, and feel sorry for you, but if you have a broken mind, they can't see it and they don't understand it, and they probably even avoid people who are asking for help, or behaving in a way where they're depressed and they're having irrational thought patterns, or they're self-harming. The mind's a very real thing, and when it's broke, it'll break everything. It's so subtle,
Why is there a stigma? In your opinion, why do you think there's still a stigma? I know, like, listen, there's a lot of, like, social media has these sort of like fashion. It's almost like fashionable. So mindset was to be fashionable for a while, and then like there's always sort of these wee drips and drabs of like moments where all trainers jump in this and all people jump in this. Why do you think, like, so the mindset thing and then mental health's become pretty prevalent this last 30 years, but there still seems to be a bit of a stigma to mental health? Why do you think it is such a stigma? Like you just said about breaking your arm.
It's people look at it as a mental weakness, but it's far from a weakness. It usually comes around. I know a lot of people, and they've just struggled and fought their whole life, and then they have a mental breakdown. So it's God, you can talk all day on this, but the mind, there's still a stigma where it's a weakness, especially in men. They see it as a weakness because, I said, a symptom of depression is they'll cry a lot. Men are taught, oh, you don't cry. Big boys don't cry. So if you're crying for no reason, you're feeling even worse. It's embarrassing, and the self-loathing gets worse. The guilt, beating the self up, and then that's profound effects on the unconscious. That irrational mind, and that's where the irrational thoughts are coming from. Then eventually, of self-harm, of taking their own life. And I was at a talk at Queen's before lockdown. We're giving a lecture to young psychologists, and the lecturer actually told them that it was quite normal to have these thoughts. Most people have these thoughts, and during question time, I challenged her on it, because it's not normal. What's normal is if I come at you with something sharp, you move. That's a rational, analytical, normal thought, because your highest intention as a human being is survival. For you to have a thought of sticking that needle in yourself or cutting yourself, that's far from normal, and it's coming from the irrational part of the mind, not the rational everyday mind.
So why would she say it was rational? What was her rationale behind that?
It's her training.
Does that lead, like, if she's the top hierarchy of like, knowledge that we're meant to be for these mental health, that means her information's trickling down to the clients that need the help. Is that not then doing damage?
I asked the question. I asked why would she say that, and I can't remember the other question. And then
Sean, 2 seconds. You keep talking. 2 seconds.
Yep. Then the person chairing the meeting, they said no more questions. So, but we have to understand, if anybody,
sorry, buddy,
the young ones, if anybody's coming off with irrational language, what's the point in life? I hate myself. I'm disgusting. That's a red light going off, and it has to be dealt with. They have to speak to someone.
With social media, is that not?
Yeah, now with social media and a lot of kids, and a lot of websites about this type of thing. A lot of kids are using it for leverage as well, but you'll know when it's genuine. It's not somebody shouting out in anger.
But what I'm saying is, do you not feel
there's even children blackmail their parents on this type of thing as well? So it's a very difficult subject, and but as I said earlier, if you know your own children and then their moods start to change. Maybe they're not coming out of their room as much. You intuitively feel there's something wrong, and they start to speak in these ways. They're talking in these ways, or they're posting. You see people posting on Facebook sometimes. Their language all starts to change, and they're talking about what's the point in life? I don't feel like doing anything. I hate myself. You'll see it in the right, and I've seen cases of that, not in the recently, and then everybody comes on, which is good, and sends them nice messages, wants to talk to them, and they're bombarded because they're thinking nobody cares, nobody likes them, and then there's maybe hundreds of people coming on and writing good things about them, and somebody will contact them and take them to one of their local centres. There has to be therapy with that. Like, can't leave that alone.
A lot of people are expecting a tsunami of mental health issues because of the last 12 months. And obviously, parents are going to be at the forefront of this. I'd say a lot of parents are going to be nervous about their children. So what are the warning signs? Parents, we just covered that a bit. But what steps can the normal average parent, because the thing is, like, I attribute, like, I think back to how I was a teenager and my suicide attempts, and as a young teenager, a young man, and I now look at that from the perspective my parents must have felt, whereby I project my fear, my God side real being like that would be terrifying for me. So obviously parents will want to help their children, but a lot of parents are going to be limited to their knowledge and what to do. But there must be some sort of easy things to do, or things that any adult can apply to help their children maybe first do the first step or second stage of this type of thing.
Well, you froze there. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Oh, you're okay. You're frozen well.
So, first step is lift the phone and phone somebody. Phone one of the centers. There's lots of centers. There's lots of phone numbers now for professional help. Sadly, again, and it's just what's going on at the moment. I read an article there in the Irish News a couple of weeks ago about it was a local GP, and he said that the amount of children with anxiety and depression because of lockdown, and because they're not in the schools, so they can't be counselled, so they're actually putting them on a waiting list of 10 months. That's what it is, a 10-month waiting list to see a counsellor. Now, again, that's their protocol and that's their training. But if it was me, and again, all doctors are different, if it was me, and if there was a 10-month waiting list, I would say to the parents, listen, somebody up there, there's a private therapist up the road, and you can pay to see them private. Yeah. At the end of the day, what price do you put on a child's life?
This is true. Yeah, it's like, I think, but the other problem is then there are going to be parents who are not in a position financially to be able to afford therapy on a regular basis, and I'm sure there's like families that have got people that are going to lose their jobs, things like that. There's going to be, like I said, a tsunami of depression and mental health problems. There must be something parents can look out for, and simple things like nature walks or whatever that they can try to help. I think the problem is most people feel completely hopeless and helpless when it comes to mental health, because it's been so shunned for so many years that no one really knows how to approach a topic or approach a subject to someone, and they're always scared of saying the wrong thing that could set them over the edge. And that's the problem.
To keep it simple, self-esteem is the foundation you're built upon. Everybody's looking at acceptance of other people, because a lot of them don't accept themselves because they don't really know who they are. They've no belief in themselves either, because again, they don't know who they really are or the resources. If you believe in somebody, pick sport. A lot of people believe in great footballers, or they believe in great singers or pop stars, but they've studied that individual. They know all about that individual. They know more about that individual than they know about themselves. So it's only when you study yourself, you start to install this self-belief in this individual. So then when there's things coming up, change, loss, wee bit of hardship in life, then that self-belief can override the feeling of self-doubt, because it's the self-doubt is the origin of the stress, of the anxiety, of the depression. So it's teaching them to accept themselves, who they are, their uniqueness, their skills, their potential strengths, which adults call weaknesses. There's no such thing as a weakness. It's something you haven't bloody practiced. That's all it is. So, and it's building that self-belief in them, not throwing things at them to change their state. Oh, he's bored, he's not going to, or here, I'll cheer you up, I'll buy you another PlayStation game, I'll get you a new phone, I'll buy you a new pair of shoes at £300, blah, blah, blah. Means nothing. It has to be coming from the core. That's what you can. It's same in sport. As I said earlier, a lot of people are hammering into their kids, if you're not a winner, you're a loser in life. It's more important that your child feels like a champion than they become a champion. Even if you become a champion, you can only be a champion for so long. When you know how to feel like a champion, you can feel like a champion your whole life. And you don't need anybody to be making you feel that way. That's what everybody wants. They want to feel content and safe. They want to feel as if they're in control and they feel accepted.
The way I see a lot of things, Sean, is there seems to be a lot of guilt from parents. So, go back to the social structure of today. Parents work 24/7 to provide kids the things the kids think they want, because the marketing agencies tell them they want it. And what that's, I'm seeing it here. I'm seeing it everywhere. Kids they're given whatever they want when they want it, and the demands are putting in. But that's not, for me, that's not parenting. Parenting is not about being a best friend, about giving the kids they want. It's giving kids what they need. And what kids need is structure, discipline, and an understanding that they belong, a sense of belonging. And I think there seems to be a disconnect. Kids want to be Xbox all day. Our generation, we were kicked out of the house and we weren't allowed back in, and none of us wanted to come in and play football. Yeah. Nowadays, kids don't want to come off the computers. They don't want to play football. They don't want to do this. And I can see a serious decline in activity, an increase in obesity, and a decrease in confidence in kids. They all must be connected.
It's but it's the way of the world, Paul. And you're not going to get the kids off the machines. It's about balance. Having their sport, have their games. I remember 2 summers ago, I says to my son, it was a lovely day. He says, get out in the street, play with your friends, sitting on the game, day like that. And he says, there's nobody out. I says, where are they all? He says, they're on this. So, and again, sometimes we're a bit overzealous. I want you to come out with me and I want you to walk the mountains. And can you remember being that age yourself? You didn't want to do things for your dad. It's like, not cool anymore.
Do we have like rose tinted glasses in our childhood? I always wonder this, are we now at that generation where we're like young bucks? No, they don't know what how good they have it their life and all this bullshit that your guys spoke to you. Is it? Do you think there's a definite element of like parents wanting too much from their kids and not letting their kids be kids in the modern era?
Again, parenting is a skill we learn through experience. It's like anything. A lot of young parents, like you think back, you're sort of practicing your first child. It's like, oh my God, what has happened to the world? You learn as you go along, and then like the young parents, they have to learn everything too, and they learn through experience. You can't teach people experience. So and everybody's doing their best at their level of knowledge and their level of their resources. Everybody's doing their best to get on. Some people can't deal with it, and again, a lot of them are self-medicating, or they're being medicated long term, and they can't get off the medication that they've been on from their GP. I see a lot of that as well.
Nick McClellan has just asked, with lockdown, do you not think we've pushed the kids even more towards devices and online now?
Yeah. Again, but it's that balance. If you're out for a walk, take them with you. If you're in the exercise in the house, see if they'll join in. you have to get creative. Everybody has had to reassess what they're doing, and everybody has had to get creative. You have to adapt to survive. And with this pandemic going on, those who, especially in business, I do a lot of work with business owners. The ones who have reassessed and adapted, they're going to survive. Others, it's like, this isn't fair, and they're talking about knocking back. And a lot of it has really affected them psychologically. So I say it depends on the age of the child as well. Getting back into the old games, if they've got bicycles, if they're young enough, they've bicycles, and you can take them out to the parks. But it's that, and there will be, again, depending on the individual, the parent, you're talking a vast amount of people here. Some will be happy enough going into your room and just play your game, because I'm going to vegetate in front of the TV here.
Yeah, they're not really setting the kids up for a life where they can cope by themselves and cope with the things that life's going to throw at them. One of our very good friends, Martin, I love his idea of what Martin does. He runs the Little Spartans, which is a martial art club for kids, but it's different ethos. The kids, it's very disciplined. They have to listen to the whistle, and they obey the whistle, and they can't speak, and they have to stand the attention. Old school discipline that I think a lot of modern day psychologists type think is wrong. Personally, I think it's a very good thing to have, because discipline, like your boss, when you're older, your boss isn't going to give a shit about your fucking problems. He's just going to say you want to do his job. But he's got an idea that I think is a fantastic idea about getting kids into the wild camping. What do you think about like using nature as a method of teaching?
Well, you're talking to somebody who loves loves nature, so I think it's great to disassociate. They get outside, they get up into nature, and go for the walks, and it makes you realize how unimportant you are as well at times when you're up the mountains and you're in a forest, and you have to have your tent up right. You have to make sure you're not near a tree that's going to blow down either. So it is good getting the kids back to relying on their own resources. Anything that's going to get them back to basics, because it is about the basics. It's about the foundation of who we are and our resources.
Again, I think this comes down to parents.
Children think they don't have any resources, but they do.
Kids are kids. Do you know, like if you were a kid born in the 50s, if a kid today was born in the 50s, the kid would adapt very quickly to the way that, and he'd probably have a happier life in the 50s, 60s, 70s than he would today. The simpler life seems to have the answers to a lot of the depressional problems. Do you know, if you've no social media, you've no comparison. If you've no video games, you've got to find a way of entertaining yourself, and all those are lessons. And I'm a big believer, though Gail isn't as much, but I'm a believer that the Xbox should be used as a reward, not as our YouTube's used as a reward, whatever, instead of just normal everyday life. They need to. Yeah. I'm a believer they should earn that right to play that game and earn that right to watch TV. You can't just allow them to come in and expect this to be a daily occurrence. And I think a lot of parents fall. I did it myself. You fall into that trap of just, I want 5 minutes a piece here, take that, and 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes becomes an hour becomes a day, a habit, and then you're into that cycle. How do you break that? How would you suggest, if someone came in saying this is the problem, how would you suggest breaking it that doesn't cause the stress of the parent and stress of the kid?
Well, you just said it there. Use it as a reward and structure their day. So when they're back at school, you come in from school, you do your homework. You can have an hour on the PlayStation. You can have that 1 hour tonight.
Can't ignore that.
And if they have their sport in between, and kids can do all the, as adults. If I says to you, right, you're going to go to college from 9 to 3:30, you're going to come back and you're going to study for a couple of hours, then you're getting ready and you have to go out and you have to play your sport, and then you come back and you'd be stressed out. But kids could do loads of activities and just in their flow that they don't get stressed about it. So, but again, a lot of people listening to this will have different perceptions. They'll have different children with different personalities. They'll have different issues. Some might work for themselves. Some mightn't work at all. some might have a job working for somebody, trying to work from home. I done a call there. It was a couple of calls from a company down south that build virtual reality advertising, and a couple of girls found it really difficult. They were working from home. So when I was on the Zoom session, the kids were whizzing by behind them and shouting things and opening the fridge, and how do you work through that? So everybody has their cross to bear, I suppose. But finding that balance, not being too hard on yourself, and don't be too hard on the kids. As I said earlier, the self-acceptance, the self-esteem is everything. Confidence comes and goes. I'd say.
What would you difference between confidence and resilience? What would you say the differences are?
Confidence comes and goes. You can be confident at baking buns, and then when you're asked to do public speaking, it can disappear again. It's only a feeling. It's like an emotion. It's an energy and motion through the nervous system. It's not there all the time, and it's an important feeling. Whereas confidence, it's not being cocky. Again, a lot of people in Northern Ireland think you're being cocky if you talk about confidence. And I remember taking a ballet school, and they were all saying to the teachers, "He not mean that we have to be cocky." Confidence is a feeling inside that's saying, "I'm capable, I'm safe, and I'm capable." That's all.
Resilience is a skill. Would you classify resilience as a skill?
Resilience is about being made of rubber. Take the hits, take the falls, adapt, keep moving forward. Keep moving. That's it. Keep moving forward. You can't break something that's soft. If you become too hard and too brittle, and again, that's caused a lot of mental breakdowns. You're a man, you have to be hard, you have to be tough, you don't cry, you don't show any emotion, you have to take it on the chin. Anything that becomes too hard becomes brittle and it snaps.
So tell me this, do you not think there is some sort of argument that men have went too 180 and now we're starting to become less manly and we're losing the ability to be men because of this? I'm not saying it's wrong for men to cry. All men should cry, but do you know, like this toxic masculinity and things, I guess, come into culture that it's almost being shunned upon to be a man. Do you not think that is somehow having an effect on young men? They actually don't know their place. They don't know how to act as men. They've got parents, one single mother parents who don't know how to, and that's not an insult to the women, the mothers, they're doing their best, but they're not men. So we've got these men who have never had that male influence in their life, have never been shown how to be a man. And now there's a confusion. They hit 13, 14. They become like emotional. They've been a man of the house for years, and now they don't know how to handle this type of thing. Or am I just way off field?
Again, it's you're born into your personality. It's like they had the class sects in India, where if you were born into a family of academics, that's what you'd done. If you were born into a warrior class, you joined the army, and it was in your nature. You were a fighter, and everybody's different. So some kids want to be artists, some want to lift weights, some want to box. So it's understanding who they are and accepting that and letting them be who they are and supporting them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can't. Sometimes we feel everybody should be like us or do what we do, but we're all so different, and that's brilliant that we're all different. And you look at some families, and you look at babies. Some babies cry a lot, and some are very quiet. It's in their nature. It's that nature versus nurture, isn't it?
I think a lot of parents need to look inside themselves and look at, like, one thing this was mentioned to me, and it was like a real profound moment. There's like, if you find yourself not liking someone for no apparent reason, usually what you'll find is that person's reflecting and actually about yourself you don't like.
Yeah.
So I'd say a lot of parents get frustrated with their kids because their kids have picked up a lot of their personality they don't like about themselves. And it's like the kids are a permanent reminder of, that was me, that's me, that's me. But we're maybe not actually in that mindset to actually realize that and recognize that. And we're blaming the kids when it's an actual fact it's our own misgivings and own faults that we don't like about ourselves.
You'll get a lot of parents you see it a lot in sport too, wanting to live their life through the kids because they never played sport, or they were no good at sport, or they weren't a champion. So that child's going to be a champion at all costs, because so they can talk about them and live their life through them, and that's not healthy. That's not too healthy either. So I know we are coming from there. But again, Paul, and everybody is doing their best according to their own knowledge, and everybody's suffering at some level. There's no perfect parents out there. There's no perfect kids, but we all have to just keep reassessing and readjusting and keep moving forward. And sometimes you need to rest. Sometimes, again, a lot of men will try and push through depression and push and fight. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to have a rest. It just means you're human. It's like if you're an athlete and you're in burnout, you need to take time off and you need to rest. And sometimes your mind needs to rest as well.
What would you do you introduce kids to meditation?
They get bored. There's a way to do that, okay, and it's done through games and all. A lot of people will come in, and mindfulness is a big buzz word.
Yeah.
It's all over the media, and I don't know. I've seen bits and bobs of it, but to teach a child just to shut off and switch off with the mindfulness is good. But is it sticking your head in the sand as well when things are going on around you can't deal with? So they need resilience with the mindfulness. Mindfulness on its own, and even a lot of meditation taught out there isn't real meditation. It's preparation for meditation through mental exercises, but again, it's branded and marketed as meditation.
You did you told me you done it. Was it a 2-day or 4-day non-speaking of the thing where you couldn't speak for 4 days?
Oh yeah, the silent retreats. They're and that it's good to do stuff like that as well, so you can look at your own mind and especially the ego mind, what's going on.
Give it a brief rundown, because I think you're crazy at these things, but I lap these things up like you. I think you're mad. I just go, God, he's crazy doing that.
It was bloody
hard. Me shutting up for 2 days.
It was mad for me because I never shut up. So you were just down to talk to everybody and wanted to know who they were. And again, we do that. That's a survival technique. When you're in a group, you want to know who's like me, who's got the same sort of interests. So within a group, you always want a group. It's safety in numbers, and we all do that instinctively. But you weren't allowed to introduce yourself. You weren't allowed to speak as soon as you come in. Your morning started at 4:30, and you went up and you went down it was down in Dalgan Park where they train the missionaries, and you just sat in this prayer room for an hour. Didn't teach you meditation, you just sat. So that was how it started. Then you had a yoga class, you had a walk. But the powerful thing was keeping a journal on what you were saying to yourself, what your perceptions and stuff. And you noticed even the critical mind coming up, the ego mind, starting to judge people that you didn't know. And then you're asking yourself, why am I even doing that? I don't know them people. How do I know that's true? And so you kept this, it was powerful now. The hardest part of thinking day one was sitting at a very small table with another 3 people eating, and they were right in your face, and everybody was trying not to look at each other, and you were really uncomfortable eating. And I noticed on the first, everybody else did as well. You'd speak about it afterwards. Everybody kept getting up and getting desserts. Although you were full up, you were feeling so uncomfortable, you began to comfort eat. You needed sweet things, So not for everybody, but I've done a couple of them. But I think
when you're here, I want you to talk about one other crazy thing you've done, because I still tell everyone about this story that I just think it's the maddest story. Your firewalk experience. This
no sense.
Jesus, Sean, when I tell people this story, they look at me like I'm crazy, like think you're nuts. But go delve into it, because it's a great story to tell. Because I think when people understand, when you're talking about resilience, you're not just talking about like you've read in a book. You've went and you've walked the walk, and there's so many things because of your personal backgrounds. You've walked the walk, and this is one of this is something that the average guy and woman will not do. It blew me away. Tell the story if you don't mind, please.
It was just part of. I said earlier, I got into the boxing. I got a lot of bad kickings when I was younger, and cheekbone smashed and stuff. And then the boxing, and I had made that decision. Okay, nobody's going to do that again. I'm going to build this shell around myself, make myself as hard as I can, and do that with the boxing. And then the Thai boxing landed in Belfast and King Street. Remember Frankie's class, and the Thai boxing. Started going to London and training in the Jaguar Mantis system, which was very sickening. A lot of bone conditioning and very, very painful, hard system. But that was me building that shell, getting tougher. And then I heard about I was invited to Singapore for 6 weeks, and they showed me the fire walking. It's one of the biggest fire walks in Asia at the Miriam Temple. And I says, well, I do that too when I'm over, and make me even tougher type thing. So even as soon as you get off the plane, you were going around temples. I didn't understand a lot of what was going on. So you had 2 nights with no sleep, and then the morning of the fire walk, you had to walk for 6 miles around all the temples and churches in Singapore as they lit the fire. So the pit was a gravel pit dug, and it was 2.5 foot deep and 20 foot long.
Yeah, you skipped over the walk, like, because did you not have to roll in dirt where we're sweating, your feet were blistered off you?
That was the night before they made you roll in grit. They hosed you down, you rolled in grit, and then you had to roll with your arms above your head on tiles for 1/4 mile, so stuck in you like thorns. So then the walk, once they lit the fire, you had to do the walk, but the pavings in Singapore, black tiles, so it was like walking on hot plates on an oven. So my feet all started blistering and the skin coming off. A lot of Indians were taking lifts. You could see them jumping in the back of the jeeps and stuff. So we got to the head temple, and then you had to walk back again. I nearly got crushed going out of the gates because there's like 3,000 Indians trying to get out this one temple gate, and I got caught in a crowd. I don't know who lifted me. Somebody pulled me out. It felt like, I felt I was a goner, like. But I got back anyway. I was totally exhausted. I was in agony. I couldn't stand when my feet were so sore. And then I had to be lifted up to walk in to get on the fire. So this thing's blowing off like a furnace. The heat coming off it. And there's guys they keep dipping these towels in water and wrapping them around themselves so they can rake it from about, say, 6 foot away. So I went in, and your initial feeling is, don't do it. It's mad. There's ambulances and all. People.
How deep would you say it was? Like 2 foot deep?
2.5 foot deep. So it's compressed hardwood logs. It felt like walking on stones heated in a furnace, but you sink in a bit. So after, I wasn't going to do it, to be honest, but there was some man behind me, and he says, listen, we don't do this for ourselves. We do this for people who are dying. This is like a pilgrimage for sick people and that, or people that you love. He says, go out there and throw your flowers and just walk. And I think only he said that, probably because if you're looking at human motivation, if it's up to us, we're doing it for ourselves. You pull out when things get tough. But if you'll go the extra mile for other people. And that's the highest form of human motivation, purpose. So I threw him, and then I walked. After the 3rd step, I thought my brain wanted to shut down. Never felt heat like it. The shock of it. I got off at the end. I remember thinking, thank God that's over. You walk through milk, blessed milk. And the heat of the fire started coming up my bones, stopped about the top of my femur. And I started getting into convulsions. It felt like 2 blow torches up the inside of my leg. And I grabbed this Indian guy beside me, and I was shaking. I was shouting, what's happening to my body? And he started laughing and says, this is good. This is your sins being cleaned. Here's me. The minute I had to walk. They all got in this lorry, and I got in the front. They were all in the back singing Indian songs and stuff. And I sitting in the front, and I was just smashing my head off the dashboard. I just wanted to get out of my body. It was weird. I got back to the apartments, staying in Tackway Lane, and and my whole body started getting into convulsions then. So one of the daughters, who was a nurse, she gave me a tablet to knock me out. Got up in the morning, I had the blisters and all from the walk, no burns whatsoever. Can't explain that, and I had no pain, and so that was it. That was my mad. It was like a 18 to 30 club.
Sean, you've had some serious experience. Like, I love talking to you because I know what you tell me, the information you give me, and the advice and knowledge you have. It's from you've learned it from the best, and you've applied it, and you've pushed yourself beyond what the average person will push themselves beyond. So that's where automatically it gives you, in my eyes, it gives you authority. When you're willing to do things that I'm not willing to do, or other people aren't willing to do, the majority of us aren't willing to do, for your own beliefs, and I have to give it to you, respect you 100%. We'll leave it there today. Unless anything else you want to say, anything else you want to mention?
Only just on that story, a lot of people are capable. You know, like there was 3,000 Indians done it, and that was only one day of pain. Whereas there's a lot of people out there suffering pain every day of their life, emotional pain and physical pain. So to me, what I done was nothing.
That's a really good question I want to ask you. Something about, we're talking about broken bones, things like that. Physical pain, emotional pain. Is there a different response in the body, or does the body just react to pain as it's pain, stress?
The emotional pain will last a lot longer, and people won't deal with it as quick as the physical pain. And it's a case that it can build and build. Like, they say how you put the frog in the pot and you heat the water up. You can boil it to death. If you fire it in too quick, it'll jump out and it'll save its life. Yeah, it'll notice it. Yep. Physical pains like that, emotional pain, getting into the likes of anxiety and depression, is like cooking the frog in the pot slowly, and it will suppress the immune system. Depression will suppress the immune system.
Do you think a lot of people? Do you think a lot of us are suffering from suppressed immune systems? That's why we're so sick and so many problems in today's society.
Yeah, definitely. And the leading authority on that, and you can read all his papers. Hans Sell, the endocrinologist, he wrote about 114 papers in that. He was the leading authority in the world on stress research. And he publicly stated every year, stress is the #1 killer in the Western world because it slowly suppresses the immune system, leaving the body open to disease. Your immune system is phenomenal. It's really, really intelligent and tenacious against anything. So if it's being suppressed, then that's when things start to get dangerous. So it's in your everyday, reduce the stress, whether it's mindfulness, singing, walking, whatever you have to do.
Fun.
But it'll also, when you build your self-belief, when you're faced with obstacles in life, it's a case of, bring it on, because I can deal with you.
That was great talk, Sean. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed that, mate. That was brilliant.
That was a surprise for me, because I didn't know I was doing this today.
I know that. I just give you a wee call. Just happened to be a phone call, and we come up with this. But sometimes off the cuff is the best way you can do it. So, Sean, thank you very much for your time.
For the parents out there, don't and we talked about a lot there. Don't make it complicated. Just let the child know that you accept them for who they are and you love them to bits, and and you're there for them. And that's the best you can do as a parent. That's all we can do, because we don't know what's down the line. Nobody does. You can't control the external world.
I think another thing you've got there, it's a painful thing to understand, but it's something that I've come to terms with, is like, they're not ours. They're theirs. So we're not, our parents don't us. We are our own individual people. And I think that's where parents, we want to wrap our children in cotton wool because they mean so much to us, that we actually prevent them from living their own lives. And we try to steer our opinions, our thoughts into them to try to get them to do what we want. And if that can cause problems for the kids, because a lot of kids don't want to be what their parents want them to be. They want to be them.
Yeah. Exactly. All right.
Okay. Sean, thank you very much, man. That was a great chat. Thank you. I'll speak to you soon, buddy.
Soon.
Bye.